It seemed, and a lot of you guys had mentioned it early on, that kind of the first wave of Insurtech was really focused on the customer experience and really kind of that buying process, speeding up that buying process. I guess my question is, where do you see the next evolution that Insurtech is going to bring? While the customer experience will always be important, is it, leveraging these new streams of data, putting together new products and leveraging emerging technologies that will actually start changing perhaps like how you guys come up with risk and value risk?
I'm happy to jump in on this.
Yeah, please,
this is
John.
One that we've talked about a ton, and so totally agree. First wave of Insurtech made tremendous advancements in the UX and just making the application process really easy for the end client, and a lot of great work that went into that. My personal philosophy is that the next wave of successful Insurtechs are going to be the one that figure out how to bring together the concentric circles of technology, user experience, and insurance product design. So I won't throw out specific names, but make no mistake, the first wave of Insurtech, great front-end user experience. I can go pull examples. Many of them were using a bot policy that is virtually unchanged from the 1960s. And it's important that we also think about how do we change the actual insurance product to fit digital distribution and make it easier for the end client. And there's lots of ways that we're doing that. There's a lot more that we have on our roadmap, but I think really thinking about how those three things overlap and come together is going to be one of the keys to success for this next wave of Insurtechs.
Amazing. Alex, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Sorry, all my answers are informed by sort of the E&S nature of our business, which for those that don't know, insurance is like, that's the place where the harder business goes, or the stuff that the admitted carrier, the regular carriers don't want to write. And it's set up as a insurance market in the US with less regulation to allow for more nimble pricing and product development to write those things that the Hartford Travelers Chubb are declining. And that is a really interesting feature of the insurance market. It's also probably the most esoteric relative to the rest of the American insurance ecosystem, I'd say. And so point being is the first wave was definitely about like customer experience and digitally integrated experiences. Like I kind of think we're on the vanguard of that in E&S. Like we haven't finished that problem set in the E&S industry. Now, our clients are agents themselves. It's a heavily intermediated business. So it's a much different product paradigm than just putting an application online. It's way more process driven, handling matters around binding and issuance and renewals are a much more important part of the process. They're part of every insurance process. So I think I don't have a great answer for you on what's next because we're kind of just working with what's in front of us, but maybe that's a structural viewpoint limitation on our side. I would say, just to echo what John is saying, that the reason I personally really like working in E&S is because this structure allows us to work really deeply with a set of carriers. So we're digitizing an appetite quilt to make a really easy to use storefront for agents to get to E&S. I don't have insurance product design expertise. We have insurance experts on our team, but they're also not insurance product managers. We partner with the carriers we work with to figure out, and they have massive appetite to get their products digitally distributed. They just need trading partners to do it as such. And so we get to spend a lot of time, and these are products that they're doing dozens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of premium on through paper. And they're just trying to say, hey, how do we get this a little bit more digital? Because they buy into the client experience too. And to John's point, it's because it's E&S, they're also innovating on that product quite rapidly. So it's an interesting, it's like the more academically interesting part of insurance too, because you're really seeing how the underwriters think about risk and exposure on a high velocity basis. So no clear answer on what's next, but there's a lot to be done on user experience, particularly in some of the more complex commercial lines too, I'd say.
Thanks. And Jen, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
So I think we're, and because we are, back office application, not in the production of insurance, for us, we came along, I guess that first wave was coming through to help support companies in that space to do some of the back office work in a different way. I'd probably agree that we're kind of tiptoeing towards what I would think about as a second wave, which is there are a bunch of folks in the space right now that are doing more point work of, I'm going to tackle this specific part of the workflow. I'm going to try to improve this specific part. And one thing that we realized really early on, we were the same way, right? We were like, oh, we're going to do insurance regulatory compliance. We're going to be very specific about that. We realized there was a bigger problem around managing the workflow and visibility into the workflow. And then right now we're thinking a lot about what does it mean to be a platform in this space that empowers a workflow end-to-end in partnership with other technologies in this space, so that we can partner with Vouch and with Pathpoint and with anyone in the space. I have this kind of problem I want to solve. What are the suite of tools that I can use? There's a lot of catch up. There's some very great innovation in the space where people are doing point to point in their own surface area, but the experience of an agent, we all know and we've talked about, is to engage with multiple entities, often multiple times a day while you're pursuing a policy, you're going through a specific workflow. And so there's really interesting opportunity in this space in this next wave, I'd say, for the back office to start to think with folks who are challenging what this experience should look like for an agent in terms of getting a policy, also challenging what does it look like to onboard, what does it look like to manage, and there's some great ideas, but there isn't quite a formal, like, how are we going to do this yet? And that's what we are spending a lot of our time thinking about, is where do we want to play in that next push, where we see that there are other people who are innovating across the board. Can we tell a story together about what a modern experience could look like? And that can support someone who's new in the space, someone who's in the second wave of Insurtech, or an incumbent who wants to change their existing processes to match the demands of the market. And it's an interesting place. I would say we're like right on the edge of that, and something for the next year. But there aren't a ton of us in the insurance back office productizing it, and so I'm really excited to see, as more Insurtechs come along and think about these problem statements, what that means for our area as well.